you keep on. You've brought up Dr. Gary Nolan. He's a doctor, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
He's a professor of pathology. Actually.
I always err on that side. I was pretty sure that sounded right in my head, but I had to make sure. You brought him up a few times today, and you've talked a little bit about like some of the testing he's done. But one of the things you talk about in your documentary is how seemingly, according to him, he fell into this kind of by accident. And if I remember this correctly, it had to do with he was studying like cancer or something metallically.
Well, there's
right?
two things that his work led him to. One is he developed a special type of mass spectrometry. The guy's a genius.
English.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
That's where you could put a piece of something into a machine and it'll tell you what it's made of.
Okay.
So he developed a very specialized version of that. The guy is quite a genius, and I think he's become rich off of some of the stuff that he's invented and patented. And
he's out of Stanford too.
Yeah,
right?
he's at Stanford. Yeah.
Okay.
So he invented a certain type of mass spectrometry, and one of the things that they were using in it was like a metal tag to give a consistent reading throughout stuff. So like you'll tag something with something so that you can use it to gauge anomalous responses by the machine. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So in other words, if you have a piece of aluminum and you put it in with another sample, as long as that piece of aluminum comes out reading exactly like that piece of aluminum should read, then you can rely on the other readings because you have the piece of aluminum to gauge the exactness of the machine's
Makes
work.
sense.
So he had developed this special type of mass spectrometry that used metal tags. And he was approached, and he says, yeah, I have this machine nobody else has. And so he got the chance to study materials.
I can't remember. Did he say who approached him?
Well, he said Jacques Vallée was one of them. And Jacques has some of the
famous
stuff.
French scientist.
Yeah, he's got some of the materials from Brazil, from UFO things, possibly James Fox's, possibly other ones. It's well known. But he also says, I was approached by Jacques and others. And that's one of the biggest cool things in the movie is that I researched him, and he did an interview with Jesse Michaels where he told this guy, Jesse's a podcaster, he says he told him supposedly that he can show you some of this stuff, but I can't show you other stuff because of national security concerns. But then he went on the Lex Friedman interview, Lex Friedman show, and he said, yes, I've been given stuff by people, not like the government or anybody. And so I confronted him on that. I'm like, look, in one podcast, you said you had stuff you couldn't show because of national security concerns. And then in another interview, you said you hadn't been given materials by the government. So kind of which is it? And that's, that's another accidental truth moment in the film where he just kind of, his response is worth the $4.99. So that's the kind of thing that you see in the movie, but it's very clear that he's been studying classified materials that are of unknown origin, and what he will tell you off camera, very candidly, it confirms that. But what we put in the movie confirms it. And then he went on to he was given brain scans of victims of the Havana syndrome.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and he was studying those, and through the course of that, he got to the point where he was able to identify certain aspects of that, and these people were being injured by artificial means, and then he kicked it back to wherever he got it.
What did he discuss? I don't know as much about that. So, did he discuss about whether or not the findings conclude that it could be human-made versus something that maybe is not?
Nothing with the Havana syndrome that although they don't understand the technology that's causing this. Yeah. But I believe from what he told me, and it's not in the film, so I don't remember every aspect of it, but he said that he was able to determine that yes, there was something happening to these people, and across these different specimens and MRIs, there was something consistent that had in common. And at that point, he's done. He's done his research work. He's returned his reports to whoever gave him the stuff to look into. But at the same time, he was applying some of these same readings to people like experiencers and remote viewers. And people
experiencers are people who got abducted
supposedly
and stuff.
had some kind of encounter with a non-human intelligence. That whole phraseology kind of has to expand at this point. and we could talk about that if you want. But
Sure.
he found an anomaly in the brains of people that have heightened psychic abilities. Our remote viewers have had these kind of experiences where there's a part of the brain called the basal ganglia that has heightened activity. And what he found is that when he did more research into what the basal ganglia is, it's long been associated with heightened perception, heightened awareness, and intuition, and things like that. And now he's got scientific evidence that people that are having these experiences have this heightened activity in this part of the brain. So in some cases, it's more developed. So that's the whole last third of the movie, is talking about how we now have actual evidence that people that are having certain experiences have a slightly different brain physiology than people that aren't. And he's found that these people are, they tend to seek each other out. They tend to find each other, and like you'll find couples that both have the same thing going on with their brains, and that it is almost like a whole other classification of Homo sapien that has this level and this type of brain, and that he thinks, and that there's all kinds of different methods of communication, all kinds of different methods of information transfer. And this is all what the last part of the movie is about, is how this all interacts with consciousness that we don't know about, but that our evolution has learned to latch onto. And so this thing that he's discovered in the basal ganglia of the brain among certain people that have certain abilities and experiences in common is indicating to us that our physiology is adapting to stuff that we're not aware of, on a scientific basis.
No, I was thinking, as you were saying this, the thing that's blowing my mind is I hadn't thought about that in the context of like some of the non-alien stuff. Like now my head may be going way above my pay grade thinking about this, but
we're way above our pay grade.
Yeah, I mean, fuck,
we need Michio Kaku back.
I know. I've got to get him back down here. But like thinking about, like, let's use the Havana syndrome example, because there's been, there's people that try to claim like, oh no, it's in their heads or whatever. But I've been trying to get this one fucking guy in here for 16 months now. I started emailing him like March 2022, and I've never heard a word back. So if someone has an in to him, this guy Mark Polymeropoulos, he was a CIA agent very high up, who apparently has severe Havana syndrome. And he's been on some other podcasts talking about it. Actually, shit, he was on Sean Ryan. I could ask Sean for that. Fuck, I just figured that out. Anyway, but maybe we'll get him in here. Like, I hear guys like that talk, and instantly when it's a CIA guy, some people say like, oh, it could be a government disinformation agent. But like, I believe him when I hear him talking about this. And I also hear some of the evidence where people try to say that like, oh, it's just a heightened sense of awareness and paranoia that exists in people. And I go, well, that could be true too, but when you hear the level of some of these symptoms and the lengths the government has gone to like ignore it or like cover it up, or not even in Mark's case, like for a long time provide the right health care for him to get treated on it, I start to go, well, maybe this is like, instantly they'll say like, oh, China, Russia, whatever, and just go to the regular culprits. Maybe it's something that is, for lack of a better way of putting it, extraterrestrial, so to speak. And I don't mean that by like aliens. Maybe it is like a different vibrating frequency in like the multiverse, and which I may be misreading some of what you said, but that's where my head was going to with what Gary was talking about with this. Yeah.
So we talked briefly about it. I didn't put it in the film because the Havana syndrome doesn't have anything to do with, the other stuff. Yeah. But basically the way he summed it up to me, as best as I can remember, is that yes, I was given all of these MRIs in this brain scan technology. I was able to find things that correlated, and I was able to identify that yes, this was an injury to these people. And so at that point, he said, I didn't study it any further. I don't know who's doing it or where it came from, but that was a different framework than what he discovered with the basal ganglia in people. It was two different things. And so he started to find these anomalies among certain people, and it was about the same time he was doing the Havana stuff. So he was able to kind of correlate different things going on in the brains of different people. And that's when he stumbled on he literally stumbled on it. The basal ganglia research, it was something that he found by accident. But he was also able to validate the Havana syndrome stuff, that it is something that is, it's a common, it's similar in all of the people that were studied, and it is something that was affected by external forces.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.